Well, let's start with Dana Nessel. She has been a lightning rod, one of those attorney generals who's willing to wade into a courtroom, whether the law's on her side or not, doesn't matter. Lawfare is one of the things that Democrats use time and again. This time, though, it's slammed into a wall. And let me just read this to you, Grant. I believe that they were executing their constitutional right to seek redress. This is not an election interference case sending an alternate document. She just nailed him to the wall, did this judge. This is an appointee of Governor Gretchen Whitmer saying, no, there's no case here. You're way out of bounds. It's nice to see it come down this way, isn't it?
Steve, quite frankly, it's amazing. I'm not often surprised anymore by news coming out. You see a Democrat judge. I expect them to act in the worst way possible towards great Make America Great Again conservatives like these 15 that were charged in this case. And in many respects, this decision on her behalf to let these people go, in some respects, restores my faith in humanity, that they actually can have common sense, the other side. When we have seen every day, in and out, that Democrats are literally leaving common sense behind, turning their backs on American citizens. And here you have a judge. I'm sure this was not politically popular from Democrats inside Michigan who were so upset with this plan. And I think it was at least a legitimate plan. It may have been a Hail Mary, yes, but it certainly wasn't criminal in any way. And you know, we're what, 4+ years after all of this, 5 years after this now? And this case only just now gets dismissed, thankfully, to this judge. I'm happy to see it. I really am. It makes me smile.
We're going to hear from one of these. We're going to hear from one of the defendants in this case. The former state Republican co-chair, Michonne Maddock, will join us here in a few minutes on the program. You want to see that? Plus one of the winning attorneys as well, David Coleman. Look, these were farmers and teachers and retirees. These were just ordinary folks thinking, well, I don't know if Trump won or lost the election. In fact, I think it might have been stolen. So therefore, I'm going to sign this piece of paper and have an alternate slate of electors. It's not criminal. It's politics. and the Democrats, Grant, they just go after people in the courtroom whenever they can because they got away with it for so long. But we've seen a series of victories for Donald Trump, for these electors. It feels like the tide might be turning a little bit inside the courtrooms. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if the tide is turning in the lower courtrooms other than this one victory we got with a Democrat judge. Certainly the tide turns once it gets to the Supreme Court. I think we're undefeated at the Supreme Court when it comes to these decisions for President Trump. And you talked about the people they were going after. These are the J6ers, the same types of people, grandmothers and grandfathers and plumbers and electricians, some of them members of the military on January 6th, and they went after them with a vengeance. Instead, now we're getting back to a federal government, the Department of Justice, that's literally going to focus on real criminals that make the lives of American citizens very difficult. You mentioned they're going to charge this evil, violent animal in Charlotte, and they're going to charge him with federal crimes. Yep. We never would have seen that under Joe Biden, ever. And that alone says a lot. Yep.
Yeah, you pointed out, and I just feel like right now, Grant, there is this 81% support in all the polling that I've seen for law and order, supporting police. Look, New York City's down about 3,000 officers. Chicago is short about 1,400. D.C. is down 500. Let me give you this statistic, folks. In 29 days, there have been 5 murders in Washington, D.C., 5. If you take that out over the entire year, that comes down to 63. There hasn't been a year with less than 200 murders in D.C. in a long time. It averages about 200. This would be less than 2/3. I mean, it's down to 1/3 of the murders. It's working. Who would reject that? It's working.
Well, the Democrats reject it because they let their hatred of Donald Trump get in the way of everything, even the safety and security of American citizens and their own fellow Democrats. Who does everyone out there think was being persecuted by the crazy violent criminals in Washington, D.C. and Chicago? It's mostly Democrat folks that live in those cities. Minorities that had typically been Democrat for a long time, and I think we're now seeing that change most certainly. But the Democrat leadership in America today, their heads are spinning. They are spiraling down a drain as they watch the country start to be restored, and they can't believe that all it took was a little common sense and enforcing the laws on the books. We didn't need to spend all kinds of money. We didn't need to elect all kinds of people. We needed one guy, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and we need to go back to the basics of enforcing laws on the books. It really, honestly, Steve, it literally was that simple.
It's pretty basic, Grant. There's no question. So people that watch this program know that I have an affinity for HeyJackass.com. It keeps the numbers and the rolling numbers in Chicago. Let's see. Let's keep score here. Total shot in Chicago so far this year, 1,405, 256 killed by being shot in Chicago. And the people there, the mayor specifically, J.B. Pritzker specifically, the governor, well, we don't want any help here. Everything's fine. Yeah, obviously, you've had 1,400 plus people shot in the streets of Chicago. They're like, it's good here. It's not good for the grandmothers that live there. It's not good for the people that are stuck in those bad neighborhoods. I'm sure the people on the North Shore that live in their fancy gated communities like Lincoln Park, they're just fine with it because they don't see it. But the neighborhoods that are suffering, by God, they need protection. Yeah. They need intervention, and they're going to get it, I believe, Grant, because enough is enough. Let's clean up America's cities.
You know, overwhelmingly what I'm seeing are people that are grateful for President Trump coming in and trying to take care of business, specifically in Washington, D.C. Now, I was blessed to grow up in the suburbs of New York City, and you know, we didn't have to really deal with all that much crime unless you're talking about income tax evasion. But other than that, there wasn't much crime in the town where I grew up in. But can you imagine having a 3 or 4 year old that has to be put down to sleep at 8 o'clock at night, going to bed hearing gunshots, not knowing if their 15 or 16-year-old brother or sister is going to come home at night because of the violence on the streets? I can't imagine raising children like that in an area like that. And I think finally people are fed up and they're realizing that the people that put them in that position certainly are the gangbangers, but they're also the leadership in these cities that allowed the gangbangers to flourish, releasing them from jail, not holding them, all of that. And people are fed up.
You know, I grew up in Michigan, and we used to take road trips around Lake Michigan through Indiana to Chicago to go to Wrigley Field to watch baseball. It's what we did. We're 18, 19 years old. We love doing it. I wouldn't do that today on a bet. That's how much has changed. I mean, Chicago was dicey, you know, back then. But it's a different world now. It's dangerous. Everybody knows it. It's a shooting gallery. And yet the mayor and the governor, they're like, we're just fine with it. Grant, I don't know if crime's going to be the number one issue. We're a long way from the election, but it's certainly going to be one of the considerations for most Americans when they get to the polls in the midterms. I'll give you the last word.
I'm going to say this in the kindest of ways. Americans are selfish when it comes to politics in the fact that they just want themselves, their family, and their friends to flourish. You can't flourish if you got to be worried about being stabbed to death from behind on a transit train. You can't flourish if you got to worry about a drive-by shooting in your neighborhood. And you certainly can't flourish if you got inflation at 10% and all your money is going down the tubes on gas prices. President Trump is getting back to the basics of allowing American families to flourish. This is all playing into each other. It's the inflation, it's the economy, and of course crime. Steve, you're spot on.
Yeah, absolutely. The number one thing government is supposed, the number one job, local, state, federal, doesn't matter. The number one job, keep the citizens safe. It's a pretty simple formula.